Hello, this is Dr. Victoria Scarbo speaking to you from the Seeds of Transformation Healing Center in Wareham, Massachusetts. Today we're going to talk about the Astrology and Kabbalah of November 2017. Okay, so here we are in November, and as we do every month, we take the number of the month, which of course is 11, and the universal year, which is 10. And when we add those two numbers together, we get, of course, the 21 vibration. And if we add the 2 and 1 together, we get the 3 vibration. And this is associated with the card, the World. Now, I'm going to pull that in. Oops, there we go. And here we see a person standing in the middle of a wreath. Now, this person has breasts, and there's a sash around the waist. And in some decks, the sash isn't there, and you can see that. This figure is actually hermaphrodite in that it has both the feminine and the masculine within it, and that is symbolic of our situation. Whether we are male or female, we have both male and female within us. Female being the yin magnetic force, and male being the yang or active force. And so there's the yin and the yang symbolized here. She's holding wands. Which has to do with sort of intention. She has 2, which is duality, symbolic of the fact that we live in a dual existence. We also have the wreath, which is a symbol of victory. It's also a symbol of something is circumscribed here. Okay, so there's a boundary around it. And then we also have the 4 fixed signs. Up there in the upper left, we have Aquarius. Upper right, we have Scorpio as the eagle. Lower right, we have Leo the lion, and lower left, we have Taurus. These are the 4 fixed signs. This is the Tetragrammaton. This is the 4 Gospels of the Bible. They're all symbolic. 4, of course, being a symbol of Earth and our earthly nature. Now, let's talk a little bit about the 21-3 specifically. I'm going to pull out again. Here we have, and I have here the World, and it says here completion, reward, assured success, arrival at a state of cosmic consciousness. Now, I'm going to bring you over to the Tree of Life and see where it falls on the Tree of Life. Okay, don't get dizzy on me. Here we go. There is the Tree of Life, and if we go all the way just to the bottom, we have here the 21-3 vibration. This is the path between Yesod and Malkuth, between foundation and kingdom. The 21-3, this path that's in yellow, is associated with the planet Saturn. Saturn is 3-dimensional reality. Saturn is the ring that we cannot pass, as Alice Bailey says. And so Saturn pretty much rules the realms of the earthly realms. It's Saturn's rules and regulations that we need to go by. Now, Yesod as foundation has to do more with the etheric double. It has to do with the structures, the etheric structures. Everything that is created upon Earth has an etheric double, an etheric structure. And so in this 21-3 vibration month, we are giving birth to something that we have been working on for a while now. Okay? 21-3 is birth. The yellow path there, I often liken it to the birth canal. And so we may feel somewhat squeezed this month and of course, as any mother who has had a child or anybody who has witnessed somebody having a child, we know that there can be some pain along with this process. But ultimately, it really is about giving birth to manifesting something that we have been working a while on. And we'll see this in the larger world, and we'll see it in our own world as well. So because we're dealing this month with the path between the moon and the earth, I think it's important for us to look at the lunations, the full moon and new moon that occurs in this month, and also because the path is associated with Saturn, we need to see if there's anything specific happening with Saturn of any great import, and there is actually. So let's talk first about the full moon, and the full moon occurs on November 4th. I believe it occurs between November 3rd and November 4th. It sort of depends on where you live on the planet. But it is a full moon in the sign of Taurus. And of course the sun is in Scorpio. The Taurus-Scorpio axis is the axis of life and death. Life, Taurus, death, Scorpio. It's also the axis of our resources, both our personal, individual resources, Taurus, and our shared resources. Taurus rules money, and Scorpio rules debt. And so these are all issues that are coming up. Now, we know that in America, the Republicans are trying to pass some sort of tax legislation or tax changes that will help the richest among, I wouldn't say us because I'm not one of those people, but the richest, percentage of people at the cost of services for the poor, and just bashing the middle class yet again. So these issues are upfront and very, very personal. So let's look at this full moon chart. Okay, so here we have this full moon chart, and I have this set for Washington, D.C., and I'm using the Porphyry house system. And we have, in orange, we have the sun and the moon indicated, and then of course we have an orange line indicating the opposition of those two planets. Now we can see that in almost exactly 90 degrees, well, not actually exactly, 90 degrees from the orange, I have circled two other things, and those are the nodes of the moon. So this particular full moon in Scorpio is square the nodal axis, and whenever we have square of the nodal axis, we're at a crossroads, and this can create a setup where we can create more problems for ourselves unless we learn how to move through the energy. Now you can also see that there is a giant triangle in this chart. This is the Grand Fire Trine that is still in the heavens, and it's between the north node of the moon, Uranus, and Sagittarius, of course, Saturn and Sagittarius. So we have the ability to, with that trine, to really create. It's a very highly creative trine. The south node, I don't have it in here, but the south node of the moon does create a kite formation with this. So we have the ability to really actually create something different with this. Taurus Scorpio, awareness around resources, awareness around life and death. And then we have the square to the nodes, the north node in Leo, and then the south node in Aquarius. And Leo and Aquarius is the axis of love, and it's the axis of the self and the other, the creative self, and then the group dynamic. And so we are at a crossroads. We have this giant square in the chart. When I see a square like this, I know that this is an opportunity to move through a portal. So this is a very potent portal. This is also a supermoon, in that the moon is very close to the earth, and so when it comes up it will seem enormous. And this is always a very powerful time. Full moons are powerful in themselves. Scorpio is a powerful time. The veil between the living and the dead is very thin at this time. So all of this comes into play when you see these doorways like this. This is also opportunity for people to leave the planet if they choose, especially with the Sun in Scorpio. Okay, so I want to go to the next thing, the new moon, which is occurring in the latter degrees of Scorpio. I'll be right back. Okay, we're back. And here we have November 18th, we have a new moon in the sign of Scorpio. I'm going to move it over and bring it a little closer so you can read this. 27 degrees of Scorpio, a military band marches noisily on through the city streets, keynote the aggressive glorification of cultural values, and the key word is pomp. This symbol does concern me some, because this very much sounds like a march to war or a march to aggression. And there's certainly enough aggressive energy at this time. Scorpio is the sign of death, and so this can be a very important time, especially when it comes to what you choose to focus on. Our attention, where we put our attention, is where our energy flows, and this is a super creative time. So we want to create. We don't want to create war. We don't want to glorify might and strength. That is the old way. The new way is about cooperation. It's the new age. Now let's go over to the chart. Here again, this is for Washington, D.C. And we can see that the new moon in Scorpio is in the first house. First house is about our identity. How are we going to re-identify ourselves, as a country, perhaps, a transformation of how we are seen. And this particular new moon is trine Chiron in Pisces. Chiron in Pisces is the wound of separation from source, the wound of victimization. And so we need to come to terms with how much we have wounded through, I would say in this case, national identity. And then we also have the Sun and Moon in an inconjunct to Uranus in Aries. And of course Uranus, Aries is the warrior planet. Uranus is sudden out of nowhere. This can be challenges with people who are very much into themselves, narcissistic, bullying personalities, and so I would just be a little concerned at this time about North Korea. It's not something we can ignore. It's not something that we can that we necessarily want to be afraid of per se. We want to reimagine a different solution, and that's where our power is, in reimagining a different solution. And there are other ways, having your voice heard, spreading the news. We can't put our head in the sand anymore, and yet we can't get caught up in the spin either. We have to be in control of our own energy and our own awareness, and put our energy and awareness where it can best serve the healing of the planet and the healing of the country and the healing of each other. So I want to talk about one more thing, and that's what's going on with Saturn this month. Okay, so we can't really get through November without talking about the 11/11 gateway. And every year when it's the 11th of November, there's a big to-do about 11/11, 11/11, right? So it is energetically an important day. This 11 is this November 11th is 11/11 and 10. So we have a 31/4 vibration, which is on the Tree of Life, is in the Sephiroth called Geburah, which deals with Mars and deals with aggression and deals with the need to make adjustments. It's also about instant karma. So this is an important time. Now, what's interesting is that on 11/11 there is something big happening, and it's happening to Saturn and Uranus. And I'm going to pull you over a little bit closer. And we have a we have a disseminating trine between Uranus and Saturn. Uranus, of course, is in Aries, it's at 26 of Aries, and Saturn's at 26 of Sagittarius. This is a 240-degree trine. It is about harvest time. It's about social rewards, and it's about sharing your knowledge with people, with other people who have knowledge, and sort of learning from each other. So this is an opportunity for us to learn from each other. Now, the symbol for 26 degrees of Aries is a man possessed of more gifts than he can hold. And for Saturn, we have a flag bearer in a battle. And this person who has too many gifts he can hold certainly symbolizes the 45th president to me. So, what does this mean? Well, Uranus is, well, let's start with Saturn. Saturn is structures of reality, and Saturn builds, and Uranus breaks apart. And so when you have a trine, which is like an easy aspect to each other, this is an easier time to break down the walls to create something new. Now, that doesn't mean that we don't have chaos with this, because wherever we have Uranus, there's always a little bit of chaos. What's interesting about this is the last of 3 disseminating trines. The first one occurred back on a Christmas Day in 2016. The second one occurred June 19th of 2017, and this is the last of 3. This is part of a larger cycle that was seeded back in 1988. I'm going to bring you over. And we have 1988, we had a conjunction of these 2 planets at 30 degrees of Sagittarius, 29 degrees of Sagittarius, and 28 degrees of Sagittarius. And so Sagittarius is what we believe to be true. And so we are being exposed to some pretty harsh truths right now, are we not? Now let's go to the function of the Saturn-Uranus planetary pair. As a planetary pair, we have progressive transformation, movement within society, status quo versus innovation. And we can kind of see that even in the idea of Puerto Rico, where we have the Musk gentleman offering them solar power, and the whole whitefish thing with which is, you know, sort of it looks like political graft and such, but I won't get into that. But we can see that we have both things simultaneous. And so this is important. We are harvesting seeds that were planted back in 1988. So you can go back to your life if you've been around that long. I certainly have. You can see where 28, 29, and 30 degrees of Sagittarius fall in your chart, and you can see what is being harvested at this time with Saturn in Sagittarius and Uranus in Aries. And the last thing I want to talk about when it comes to Saturn, is a conjunction on the November 28th of Mercury and Saturn at 28 degrees of Sagittarius. And this symbol here is an old bridge over a beautiful stream, is still in constant use. And this symbol is really about something that was built well a long time ago that even in this modern day we still use. And it is not only structurally sound but beautiful. And so this is symbolic of those structures in our lives, those structures in our society that stand the test of time, that are still useful. It's not really about throwing the baby out with the bathwater, but it's breaking us free from the structures Saturn with Saturn Uranus there, that are preventing us from growing and preventing us from innovation and preventing us from evolving. And on the 28th, Mercury makes its annual conjunction to Saturn. This is about a year-long synodic cycle. And so we will be exploring with our minds what is it that we are going to keep and what is time has come. We have to remember that Saturn will be moving into Capricorn next month, and so the die will be cast at that time. So it's important to figure out what works in your life and what doesn't work in your life. What works in your community and doesn't work. What works we keep, what doesn't work you let go of. Because we are moving into a new age, whether we like it or not. So I hope you find this helpful. Today is actually the 30th of October. I'm doing this on the 30th of October. And we have some crazy windstorm here in New England. And so the winds of change are blowing hard. And certainly there are a lot of people in this country and all over the world that can see them. It's not just happening in America. It's happening everywhere. The structures of power are being tested. And it doesn't mean that they're all going to fall, but if there are abuses of power, we will know about it, we will see it, and it will be time for us to make the changes, to change things. The United States will be going through its Pluto return in 2022. So at this point, our history is coming up, slapping us in the face to show us what the reality of the situation is and how are we going to define ourselves from this point on. It's been a pleasure. I'll see you again in December. Of course, I see every day on my Astro Blurbs. And if you have any questions or if you would like a reading yourself, I can be reached at theseedsoftransformation.com, Facebook page, The Seeds of Transformation Healing Center, or my personal Facebook page, Victoria Skirbo. I'll see you again next month. Ciao.